So what if I told you that a dull, physically squished little fish sitting in a local pet store tank is actually like a living, breathing international tax evasion scheme?
I mean, it totally shatters the illusion we have about the natural world, right? When we
Mhm.
walk into a pet shop, we just assume that stuff.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
tend to look at animals in these retail environments and just assume their physical shape is, the pure result of natural selection, like survival of the fittest.
Right, in the wild.
Exactly. We definitely don't expect their biology to be, well, a byproduct of commercial loopholes.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is just so incredibly fascinating. So welcome in.
Thanks.
We have a highly specific, honestly, totally absorbing piece of source material to share with you today. We're looking at a blog post published on July 29th, 2026 by a fish-keeping enthusiast named Ang.
Yeah.
And the post is simply titled Notes on Fish Keeping, Part 301, Peacock Bass, the Large Hybrid Cichlid.
The title alone gives you a massive clue about the author's credibility
Oh,
here.
for sure. Part 301.
Right. When someone is publishing part 301 of their personal hobby notes, you are dealing with a deeply, deeply dedicated individual.
Yeah, somebody who really knows their stuff.
I mean, this is someone who meticulously documents their ecosystem, learns from their failures, and pays just intense attention to details that, well, casual observers would completely miss.
Okay, let's unpack this because our mission for this deep dive is to
Yeah.
basically follow Aang on a seemingly mundane weekend errand that accidentally blows the lid off this massive story.
It really does.
We're going to explore global trade, the strange reality of biological hybridization, and ultimately the very rare trait of just knowing your own limits.
Yeah.
And hey, you absolutely do not need to be an aquarium expert to appreciate the sheer detective work hidden inside this one funny-looking fish.
No, not at all. It serves as this perfect microcosm.
Right.
You start with a solitary person working on a domestic backyard project, and within one single observation, you just spiral entirely out into the complexities of international economics.
Yeah, it gets wild. So let's get into the specifics of that domestic project, because it really sets the stakes for all this.
Yeah, set the scene.
Aang is out on a field trip to local fish shops, actively hunting for inhabitants to stock various outdoor ponds on a backyard balcony.
The phrase outdoor balcony ponds immediately signals we're not talking about a glass bowl with some neon gravel on a kitchen counter here.
Right, no plastic scuba divers.
Exactly. Building a pond on a balcony requires a level of structural and environmental planning that honestly borders on architectural.
Oh, I bet.
You have to account for the sheer weight of the water, massive temperature fluctuations from being outdoors,
Sunlight, algae.
sunlight exposure driving algae blooms, yeah, and creating a stable biological cycle in this really restricted
Right,
footprint.
a whole ecosystem.
It really is. Aang is curating a highly sensitive, living, breathing habitat. Every single organism placed in that water has to serve a purpose or fit a very specific aesthetic and biological criteria.
Which, knowing how curated this environment needs to be, it makes Aang's discovery so puzzling.
Yeah, it really stands out.
Because during this shopping trip, Aang stops to observe a group of young juvenile fish. And they are not impressive.
Not at all.
In fact, to someone with Aang's trained eye, they look overtly strange. Aang specifically notes in the blog that their bodies appear, well, physically deformed.
Yeah, unusually short.
Yeah, unusually short and compressed. And to top it off, their coloring is just incredibly dull. They look like these gray, faded smudges.
Which is so weird because retail spaces are designed to catch your eye, right?
Exactly.
Breeders usually supply local shops with fish that pop with color or have sweeping fins or, exhibit hyperactive behavior.
Yeah, you want something pretty. So going to the pet store and seeing this deformed gray fish is kind of like going to a thrift store and finding a weirdly stitched, oddly shaped, faded shirt that just looks, well, wrong.
That's a great way to put it.
So why would a store even sell a fish that looks dull and physically deformed to a hobbyist who's trying to build a curated balcony pond? Most people would just walk right past that tank.
Oh, a novice absolutely walks past it. They'd assume the fish was sickly or poorly bred or just a really boring species.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is what separates an expert hobbyist like Aang from a beginner. It's the suspension of judgment in favor of curiosity.
Oh, interesting.
Aang didn't just dismiss the compressed shape and the dull color. They stopped and actually investigated the mechanics of the animal.
They look deeper.
Yeah, they looked at the tank label, studied the physical markers, and realized they were looking at a famous predator in disguise.
Yeah. That dull, squished little fish is actually a peacock bass.
Which is a revelation that completely changes the context of the animal.
It really does. It's wild. The peacock bass is a heavy hitter in the aquarium world. I mean, there are these massive, highly sought-after predatory cichlids.
No.
But how does a legendary predator look like a gray, deformed blob?
Well, Eng went to the reference materials and looked at photographs of the mature versions of this specific farm-raised fish.
Okay.
And it turns out the dull, compressed body form is entirely typical for the juvenile stage of this particular variation. It's literally a biological waiting game.
Yeah, according to Eng's notes, those dull juveniles undergo a massive morphological shift. As they mature, they eventually develop these incredibly vibrant, full colors.
These huge transformations.
Yeah, these striking vertical bars across their bodies. They turn into absolute showstoppers later on.
It's incredible.
But honestly, I push back on this a little bit from a practical standpoint.
How so?
Because even though Eng is super keen on keeping and breeding cichlids, Eng admits in the blog that the current dull looks of these juveniles are a major turnoff.
Yeah, they aren't pretty to look at yet.
Right, so it requires a ton of blind faith and waiting for a hobbyist to invest in this ugly duckling, hoping it turns into a swan, you know?
Well, keeping exotic pets often demands a complete rejection of instant gratification.
I guess that's true.
There's this deeply ingrained psychological tension in the hobby. You are constantly negotiating the stark reality of the present against the promise of future potential.
Oh, that's a good point.
A hobbyist buying that juvenile peacock bass isn't buying the fish as it exists today. They are buying the photograph of the adult they saw in a reference book.
They're buying the potential.
Exactly. They are purchasing a trajectory.
Which means you have to stare at this murky, compressed little fish every single day for months, just trusting the biological process will eventually pay out.
It requires immense patience. But, Eng's observation about the specific body shape of this fish cracks open a much deeper mystery.
Right, because we established the color comes in later. But what about the structure?
Yes.
If these are supposed to be apex predators, why is it sitting there with a spine that looks genuinely short and deformed?
Well, let's follow that thread.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the story pivots from biology into the mind-blowing economics of the pet trade.
It really is wild.
So, to figure out why this fish looks the way it does, Eng traces its geography.
Yeah.
Wild peacock bass are native to South America.
Right. Correct. That is their natural habitat.
But if a hobbyist wants an authentic, wild-caught South American peacock bass, they're going to pay an absolute fortune.
Oh, an astronomical premium. And the price tag isn't just about the labor of a fisherman catching it in the Amazon.
Right, it's the shipping, right?
It's everything. When you move biological assets across international borders, you trigger this huge cascade of financial penalties.
Wow.
You're paying for specialized oxygenated shipping, agricultural inspections, massive overhead for the water weight, and crucially steep international import duties.
Taxes. You are literally paying a tax on a living creature.
Exactly.
And because those wild-caught specimens are priced completely out of reach for the everyday hobbyist, the commercial market had to find a workaround.
They always do.
Right. Enter the massive commercial breeding farms in Southeast Asia. They produce an affordable alternative.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the farms looked at the global demand for the peacock bass and engineered a purely economic solution to a geographic and political problem.
Oh, wow.
They realized they could completely bypass the South American export taxes and massive shipping costs by simply breeding a version of the fish locally in Asia.
And then distributing it from there.
Yeah.
But they didn't just breed a pure peacock bass, right?
No, they didn't.
Based on the affordable price tag and the specific visual markers on the fish, Eng actually deduces that this animal is a hybrid.
Right.
Specifically, Eng thinks it's a cross between two different species, cichla-monoculus and cicha-ocellaris.
The deductive reasoning Eng uses here is just brilliant.
It's like CSI for fish.
Exactly. They take the raw data, the compressed shape, the low retail price, and literally reverse engineer the animal's entire genetic lineage.
That is so cool.
Because in the wild rivers of South America, cichla-monoculus and cichla-ocellaris might never interact or successfully spawn.
Right, they just swim past each other.
But in the highly controlled commercial vats of a Southeast Asian breeding farm, nature is forced to take a backseat to commerce. The breeders cross these species to create a hardy, mass-producible product.
Okay, but wait. That brings us back to the weird body shape.
Yes, it does.
I mean, the short or deformed body isn't just some random mutation then. because it's basically like a biological made in Southeast Asia barcode.
That is exactly what it is. It is a physical marker that you are buying an affordable farm-bred hybrid rather than a wild-caught South American import.
But why does the hybrid end up so squished? Is that just a mistake?
It's a combination of genetic mismatch and intentional market pressure. When you create an F1 hybrid, the first generation cross between two distinct species, the resulting genetics can be incredibly unstable.
Okay, that makes sense.
The biological blueprints for bone structure from the monoculus and the ocellaris basically clash, and it often results in this compressed spine.
And normally a breeder would probably call those, right?
Normally, yes. But in the Asian commercial aquarium market, short-bodied fish are often highly prized, or at the very least, highly practical.
Wait, practical how? How could a deformed spine possibly be practical?
Think about the logistics of shipping live animals globally. Water is heavy.
Yeah, super heavy.
And space in a shipping bag is really expensive. Well, a fish with a compressed, shortened spine takes up significantly less physical volume than a long, sleek, wild predator.
Oh my gosh. So you can fit more of them in a box.
You can fit more of these short-bodied hybrids into a single bag, lowering the shipping cost per unit even further. The genetic mismatch was literally co-opted as an economic advantage.
That is absolutely wild. So the global economics literally shaped the biology of the animals we see in local shops.
Yeah. We are watching artificial selection happen in real time, driven entirely by consumer demand for a cheaper price tag.
You just walk into a local pet shop, look at a murky tank, and you are staring at a living, breathing manifestation of international tax avoidance.
It forces a massive paradigm shift in how we view the exotic pet trade, doesn't it?
Yeah, they aren't just specimens of nature. They're heavily engineered commercial products.
Designed to navigate the complexities of human bureaucracy.
Wow. So knowing all of this, knowing that it's this fascinating cross-continental hybrid predator that's going to grow into a beautifully barred adult,
Yeah.
does Aang buy it for the balcony pond?
This is where Aang's story transitions from just a cool observation into a masterclass in the personal discipline of the hobbyist.
Absolutely.
Because despite being very keen on keeping and breeding cichlids and fully grasping this incredible backstory, Aang walks away.
Yeah.
The final verdict written on the blog post is incredibly stark. Aang says, "Good to know, but not for keeping."
Good to know, but not for keeping. That phrase is so brilliant. It really should be printed on a t-shirt for anyone who collects anything.
Honestly, yeah.
Aang gives two main reasons for walking away. First, like we said, the lack of immediate visual appeal. The murky juvenile colors just didn't inspire Aang.
Right.
But the second reason, and this is most crucially, is the practical reality of tank size.
The physical constraints of the real world eventually catch up with every ambitious project.
Yeah, this fish is going to grow into a huge predatory cichlid. And Aang simply doesn't have the tank space on that balcony to accommodate it.
Acknowledging that limitation requires a profound level of pragmatism.
So what does this all mean? Isn't the temptation for any collector to just buy the rare or interesting thing anyway and figure it out later?
Oh, completely. It's something that almost anyone who collects anything struggles with. The impulse to acquire the fascinating object usually overrides the logical assessment of where it's going to live.
Right, like buying furniture that doesn't fit your living room because it was on sale.
Exactly. You negotiate with reality to justify the purchase. I'll make it work. I'll rearrange everything.
I'll just buy a bigger pond next year.
Yeah, but Aang refused to play that game, which perfectly illustrates that knowledge is most valuable when properly applied.
That is so true.
Aang gathered all the data, the species, genetics, origin, adult size, visual trajectory, and used that comprehensive understanding to make a responsible decision to walk away.
They respected the biological reality of the creature over their own urge to collect it.
Exactly. It highlights the maturity of a true expert.
Well, let's briefly recap this journey because, wow, we started with a hobbyist looking for balcony pond fish.
Right.
And we uncovered a Southeast Asian hybrid of a South American predator marked by a uniquely short body bred purely for affordability and tax evasion.
It's an incredible chain of events.
It really is. And it ended with the impressive discipline of a hobbyist who knew their own limits.
You know, the entire sequence really challenges how passively we interact with the world around us.
Yeah, totally.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder that really builds on this deep dive.
Ooh, all right, let's hear it.
If the global demand for affordable pets can literally compress the physical shape of a predatory fish just to bypass international import duties.
Yeah.
What other subtle genetic compromises are secretly woven into the everyday items, the plants, or even the other pets we bring into our homes simply to fit a convenient price tag?
Oh, wow. That really makes you look at the aisles of any store completely
It
differently.
does.
You definitely need the curiosity to read the diagnostic signs, just like Aang did. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into this incredible piece of hobbyist detective work. We'll catch you next time.